first time in Thailand. Wow, that's wonderful. So make sure you become Thai member. There is a TiEcon discount on your table. Please take it with you, and I'll just tell you a little bit about it. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of Kiran Malhotra, who is our executive director, and she obviously does a much better job than I will do of doing the introduction for TiE, but she couldn't be here today. She was at other program with our other charter members. So for those who are here for the first time, so I'd like to just tell you briefly about TiE organization. And I'm not going to take too much time as we have a lot of gizmos over here Armando has collected. So I'm sure you'll be interested more in that. TiE was founded in 1992 by a small group of highly successful individuals who had come to this country, and most of them were from South Asia or Indus Valley region, and that's why the name TiE, the Indus Entrepreneurs. And however, today it stands for Talent, Ideas, and Enterprise. And since its founding in 1992, TiE has grown to over 57 chapters across 13 countries, all the way from down under Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, in India, Pakistan, in various cities, as well as in North America, in Canada and United States, as well as in Europe, right from UK, Germany to all the way up in Sweden. So, which is amazing. This is one of the only organization which is run very heavily by volunteers. Almost, I would say, close more than 95% of them are volunteers, and which is really a really great contribution to all the volunteers, including even our co-chair Armando, who flew all the way from Chicago just for this event today. So, so really appreciate that. And so TiE's mission is to cultivate and nurture entrepreneurship, or I would say the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, as we believe that this is the single most instrument for creating prosperity. And TiE has 4 constituencies. So number 1 is actually charter members. So we have a number of them here. Can I see some hands, please? Lots of them. Thank you for all coming. So the charter members are nominated to the to TiE organization based on their accomplishment. These are very highly successful entrepreneurs, executives. So all of you later on, when you have a little time for networking, please connect with them. And some of you who are planning to start any company or anything, so some of them could turn out to be your investors, advisors, as well as successful or customers. So they're really a great source and the backbone of TiE organization. And then second constituency is, of course, members. Membership is open to all, anyone, and it's I think 30 cents a day, so it's $100 a year, so it's very cheap, and so we can give you a discount today, $99 a year. If Patricia is nice over there, she can collect the credit card. So anyway, TiE membership is I have been a member since '94, and then last several years I've been a charter member. And really, one of the great things was I just used to come, and in fact I volunteered in one of our first programs, TiEcon, in '94, and in '96, just by accident, I met one of my angel investors who funded my company, which was bought by Nobel 3 years later. So it's really a lot of benefits you can get from here, make a lot of good friends, etc. Now, the third constituencies are sponsors. Sponsors, we have a number of them, like Morgan Stanley, we have BNY, and a lot of legal firms, consulting firms, venture capital firms who support us financially, so we can continue to bring out these great programs to foster entrepreneurship. And then the last but not the least are volunteers. So volunteers are, like I said, the backbone of this TiE organization, and that's how all these chapters have been done. It's just started by these volunteers in those countries as well as cities. Now, what do we do? Our key flagship program is the program called TiEcon, like for which you see the discount on your table. And in fact, last year, TiEcon was selected to be one of the top 10 conferences for ideas and entrepreneurship by Worth magazine, along with World Economic Forum, which I'm sure all of you know, and TED. So which really was, a great source of pride and accomplishment for all of us at TiE and the volunteers. As you know, the TiEcon heavily organized by volunteers. Over 300 to 400 volunteers start working on it since January, like for this year, which is going to be held on May 18th and 19th. And 2 days, it's like a boot camp for entrepreneurs and connecting with investors, angel, venture capital investors, industry executives. So really, those who haven't been to any TiECon, I would really encourage that you should come on 18th and 19th of May this year. Then we have a number of industry-specific programs, like energy right now. For each program, we have again 2 volunteers, co-chairs who are highly accomplished individuals. Like for energy, we have Armando Parker. He's general partner with Apex Venture Partners, an early stage venture capital firm based in Chicago, and he focuses a lot of his investments in energy and IT sector. And really thanks to Armando for coming all the way from there and being co-chair and organizing these events. Second co-chair with him is a gentleman called Gopal Kirk. He was here a little bit early but had to go back since he's a vice president at SunPower, and again coming from the energy sector. So really appreciate express my gratitude to them for doing this. And then we have other industry-specific programs like social media, life sciences, mobile, and then we have programs like Growth Company Forum, Women's Forum, and number of other, like we have TiE Institute also, which organizes a lot of programs. These are all around the theme of fostering entrepreneurship. That's the mission of TiE, and that's what most of us volunteers, that's what we enjoy, and that's why we are here. So those are the main programs, and now, without taking too much of time, I would like to invite Armando, and obviously thank him again for flying from Chicago and going back again tonight. So Armando, with that, you can have the stage.
Thank you very much, Naveen. So welcome and thank you all for coming here tonight to listen to this distinguished panel, talk about the revolution in the lighting market. So first I'd like to ask the panel to introduce themselves. Maurice?
My name's Maurice Carson. I'm the CFO of Intomatics, and without giving a commercial here, we make phosphors that are used in basically all forms of LED lighting, and some of the people here are customers even. So I'm very happy to be here, and Armando, thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Matt Price. I run channel development for a startup company called Enlighted, based here in Sunnyvale. Also have offices in Pune, India, and apparently met my landlord in India today, so very small world. And just for a little bit of context as to what Enlighted does is we install autonomous smart sensors and controllers at every individual fixture, every individual light fixture in commercial buildings, warehouses. And the idea is that, as you'll probably hear on the panel a lot, the efficacy of the source technology is becoming very efficient and pretty cost-effective at the source level. But the way in which humans interact with their built environment causes the systems that control our energy usage in the buildings to be effectively pretty dumb. And so Enlighted is trying to provide a cost-effective solution to capture that human behavior that's occurring within those buildings and be able to deliver energy savings on top of the light sources that are coming onto the market.
I'm Vivek Agrawal. I work at Applied Materials in the Advanced Technology Group, and Applied is a leader in manufacturing equipment for the semiconductor market, and we're also involved. We have a big division that focuses on energy, and in that smaller market, LEDs, and we make tools for the LED market.
Hi, I'm Rahul Bami. I'm at Lumileds, which is it's a company headquartered a couple of miles from here, but it's owned by Philips. I run product management and marketing for the company. We're a manufacturer of LED chips and LED solutions. Essentially have been in the business for about 12 years. The company's existed for 12 years. Just a brief history on it. The company originally grew out of HP, and it was HP's optoelectronic business, and then got spun out, got acquired by Philips about 6 years ago, and we're based right here in San Jose.
Good evening, my name is Alan Harris. I'm a partner at Crosslink Capital, venture firm in San Francisco, multidisciplinary firm. I had the core technology and energy practice within the firm. My other partners do social media, internet software, infrastructure, software as a service, but I do semiconductor and energy investments.
So one of the things to note for this panel is that we have assembled quite a variety of disciplines, from venture capital to startups to established companies, all the way from the equipment manufacturing of the supply chain to the materials, to the devices themselves, to the systems. So it should be really very interesting today. What we're going to do first is I just wanted to provide the context for the discussion today. First is to think about the fact that the regular incandescent light bulb was invented over 100 years ago by Thomas Edison. So it's been around for a very, very long time. It's been a core invention. In recent years, the annual global sales of lamps and bulbs is about $20 billion, 20 billion units per year. That's a number to keep in mind. Out of the 20 billion units sold every year, 12 billion are incandescents. And one interesting fact that I found out was that incandescents account for about 10% of the light output, even though they're 60% of sales. And that's due to the very short life. And then the other thing is that fluorescents actually are about 60% of global light output. So today the use of LEDs is started with just the on-off for power electronics, for power on electronics. That's how the LED started. And now the main uses of LEDs are smartphones, which have 4 to 6 LEDs for backlighting, and LED TVs. However, there's a much bigger opportunity in general illumination, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So with that, every panel member has a show and tell, which is the items behind us that they're going to show about their particular disciplines. And it's really fun because usually when we talk about software or whatever, you can't really show it. But with light we can, and we're going to take advantage of it. So Maurice, can you start it off?
I think we should work our way up from the equipment and the LED to the side.
Okay.
You can go that way, is that right? Sure.
So Vivek.
Well, I just had, so LEDs are grown on sapphire wafer. So this is a 2-inch sapphire wafer, and the thing, so you have an epitaxial growth, which is what we make tools for that. MOCVD, organometallic, CVD deposition. Gallium nitride tends to be high stress film, and so sapphire actually is a good wafer for that. These things used to cost about $100 a piece. Now they're down to $8 to $12, and just in the last year or two, they've gone from 40 down to about 8 to 10. So sapphire. I mean, I guess now at $8 you can start an earring company and use them for other uses, I think now. So it's an interesting thing. It kind of gives a perspective on this. Also, if you think about most LEDs typically are a square millimeter. You get about 2,000 of those on this. They're also bigger wafers, 4-inch, 6-inch. You can get 15,000 chips, and if you get smaller, up to 100,000. Just to give some perspective of the volume. And to grow a wafer to about 8 hours in an MLCD tool is probably one of the higher cost steps in the process of making it.
So I have a couple of products here, and you're welcome to come look at them after the panel. But I realized as I was getting these, I had an illumination focus. How many people here have an iPhone? So I think all of you already have a product that we make in your phones as an LED flash at that. It's a Luminears product, but from an illumination perspective, just for a perspective of to show how LEDs work, this is partly just a blue LED we have, and we essentially put a phosphor coating in it, and this is what most white light LEDs in the market are. They're essentially really blue LEDs. There's a few more lying here. This is a cutout, but Philips last year had won an L prize that I think the Department of Energy had run, and this is a variant of it. It's if I'm not mistaken, it's a 60. Yeah, it's a 60 watt bulb here. It consumes 12 watt of energy, It has slightly higher output than the 60-watt bulb does. And it's actually a very widely selling, at least variants of this are selling very well both here and in Europe. You're welcome to come look at it later. I think this is where we see huge growth in the market in terms of 2x every year or faster than 2x on an annual basis. There's a few more LEDs. Please feel free to look at them at the end.
So the reason that made sense for him to go first is my products go on top. We make the layer, the phosphor layer that he showed you on this. I have a bulb also. This is not something we sell. This is a demo bulb of remote phosphor. It's like this one. This is a lot prettier and a lot more expensive. And I also would like to show just real quick here something that we make. So this is a product that we make, although not in this form, in a panel size. It's a very high CRI, a very good quality lights, actually a 98 CRI, and underneath it are luminaires, Rebel ES blue chips that are driving this. And although we sell this actual shape, this is a 61.5 millimeter for a downlight application like this. We have applications in bulbs, in these troffers. We have reference design coming out for a 2x2, half the size of this troffer, and applications. We make both the phosphor that companies like luminaires also make and buy from us, but all LED companies must have to turn blue light into white light. And we use that phosphor to make remote phosphor that we sell to lamp manufacturers and luminaires.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the jargon. What's a CRI?
It's a quality, color rendering, and it's a quality of light, with 100 being sunlight measured against the spectrum of light and the quality of light. So it's a measure of light quality, which we think is one of the most important drivers, as along with cost, of course, of LED. It's a good way to think of it. If you look at
So C is for color?
yes, color rendering.
R is rendering?
Index.
And I is index, or, okay.
Sorry.
What about the lumens? Typically, they always measure the output in the lumens.
Yes, that's true, but what's the question about the lumens?
Normally, the output of light is measured in lumens.
LUMENS.
Lumens per watt.
Thank you, I understand that. And we do put this, how many lumens is yours?
This is an 800 something.
800 lumens for a 60 watt. This is a 40 watt, probably 600 or a little under that. And we have parts, this is probably 850 lumens output for a downlight, an equivalent to a 60 watt downlight.
And the further they call the candle power. Further down, the next measure is candle power.
Yeah. Although we don't use that a lot in our
That's
marketing.
really derived from.
Also, I guess another point to make is that phosphor isn't the only way to make white light. You can use red, green,
No, it's the
RGB.
only
as
way.
well. That's the only one we sell.
So to answer that, 95% of white light is generated by phosphor, but you're correct. Some people would use a red-blue combination or a combination, but so there are other inferior ways to do it.
And typically, right, not for, those are more for display and
Lighting,
not for,
some outdoor lighting.
when you want to change the colors and do fancy things.
Okay, so just very briefly, Amanda mentioned 100+ years old for the light bulb, and that's a light bulb that works on a grid. So what happens when you don't have a grid? So what I brought here is actually a pretty old sample. This is a desktop lamp, but it doesn't have a plug, it doesn't have a wire. The way this works is that this is a battery pack that has a couple of solar cells attached to it. You put that outside during the day, plug it in, and then you have an LED there that provides you about 7 or 8 hours of light. So if you extrapolate beyond, the fight over here to light quality and environment and so on, what this gives you is a perspective on beyond grid-tied lighting, what happens to off-grid lighting. And as I said, this is an old product. This was actually made by IKEA It's still an IKEA store. For $19.95, they have a program where you buy one, they ship one to UNESCO. So this is probably the cost of the material between the LEDs, the phosphor, the batteries, the solar cell, probably about $9. Today, you make this for about maybe $5 to $6. So, you know, one of the really interesting thing about the work that everybody is doing here is providing a roadmap to being able to generate these fixtures for maybe a couple of dollars, so that the world that doesn't have a grid doesn't have to build a grid, but can still afford the lights.
And then I'm terribly embarrassed, but I don't have a sample. I said that I would, and then I also looked at our product development roadmap and realized that our next generation of our sensor comes out next week. So what I would have showed you today probably would have been obsolete pretty quickly. But if you want a visual image, you could think of something that's about the size of a hockey puck today that would be installed next to every light fixture, whether it's fluorescent or LED. And if it's a troffer, something that's in the recessed into a drop ceiling, it's usually slid into a mounting bracket that's on the T-bar, or it goes into the ceiling tile. And if it's a pendant light, we've got different fastening mechanisms. A pendant light, something that's hanging down below the ceiling, we would fasten onto that. For me, one of the things I'll be really interested in is how does the technology to continue to progress over time, and how does our look change? We actually have an Apple-based designer, a guy named Fred Bold, who designed the most recent version of the product. He's also recently famous for designing the Nest. It'll be interesting to see how Honeywell lets that proceed in the courts, if you're not following that. But the technology for sensing is changing so quickly that one could imagine that we're collecting the same amount of information as we're collecting now on something that's as small as an image that's in a camera phone. And when we bring up our solution to the architects, most of the architects say no customer is going to want to have all these little dimples or hockey pucks on their ceiling. And they may be right, and that would encourage adoption to something that's much more integrated or, I guess, camouflaged into the building. But one of the things that we've heard from some customers, and not all, is, and this has come up for many, probably I guess 30 years in energy efficiency, is that energy efficiency is a non-sexy, it's a non-sexy product, it's a non-sexy area for a whole variety of reasons. And in talking to the sustainability people of these large corporations, one of the things they love about solar panels is it's huge, and they get to put it on their roof, or they get to put it on their field, and they make this massive investment, and they can use it for both internal and external market employees to say, see, we're company X, we're a leader, we care about this stuff. And there really is no opportunity with energy efficiency to make that investment and have a constant reminder to everybody that's kind of operating within your building that there is a connection between the people in it and the building itself. And so they actually really liked the fact that we were putting these dimples all over their ceiling, because it was a constant reminder of, oh, we paid money for this, and it'll pay itself back, but we paid money for this. We want to showcase it. So we've kind of stumbled upon this. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next couple of years.
Okay, we can get back to systems later, but maybe we should start with the size of the market, and why is it that everybody's excited about the transition from the incandescent light bulb to LED? Maurice, can you start us?
So the size of the market, we focus not so much on the LED side, which you could probably have a better view at, but the size of the phosphor market itself, including remote phosphor, we think will probably grow to be a $5-6 billion market by 2017, from less than $1 billion, from $750 million now. And of course that's predicated on guys like luminaires getting their LEDs out and selling lots of LEDs, but that's where we think the market grows, that kind of growth rate.
Matt, what do you see in terms of the sensor and the system side?
I mean, right now it's really paltry. I think in terms of, so with lighting controls goes back, also 30 years, and it could be a sweep timer or occupancy sensors that are in private offices and conference rooms and bathrooms. I think in the lighting controls that people talk about it now, it's something that has some type of intelligence, somewhere located with it. And there, I think less than 5% of the commercial market today has some type of smart lighting system that's tied to it. So I think it's like 600 million in the U.S. and probably about 1.2, 1.8 globally. So it's pretty paltry right now. I think those who are in the lighting controls industry are looking at its square footage of buildings that we're trying to control or influence, and so take the square footage that's out there and multiply it by the cost of your system, and that's kind of the market size. But it's 80 billion square feet in the U.S. and 2 to 3x that globally.
Vivek, what about the supply chain?
Supply chain. So in tool sales, it's so MOCVD. The last few years have been gangbuster years because China has been offering subsidies. So that's just MOCVD has been about $1 billion market. The rest, in terms of packaging and automation and various things, probably another billion or so per year. So somewhere between, and now we're going through an overcapacity situation in MOCVD, and just kind of as a result of the subsidies and so on. And that's kind of a typical equipment cycle. So initially there was a boom in calculators and small kind of displays, and then general displays, Samsungs and those guys, TVs, and that kind of dropped, and now we're kind of at the inflection for another one. Another interesting point, though, if you think about the market in terms of energy consumption, I think lighting is, commercial lighting is about 350 terawatt hours per year. Home use is about 150, and then outdoors another 50 or so. And so, if you think of it in terms of energy consumption, that's also a very interesting model to look at, and how that's kind of increasing over the years.
So I think it's 25 billion last year and the last 2 years on commercial light.
Rahul?
In luminaires.
So we, look at it from just an LED actual the chip or die perspective itself, and leaving aside flash and automotive businesses, which are separate healthy markets on their own. Just as you look at lighting itself, just general lighting, not including signage and so on, we look at it as last year the market of having been roughly around $1.5 billion, $1.7 billion or so. We expect that to double in the next 3 years, triple in the next 5 years, and probably be a factor of 5 to 7x by 2020. So very healthy growth rates, and this is despite all the cost reductions and ASPs that actually, so unit growth is actually much higher than that.
Well, you.
I don't have any market number, but there's two numbers that I want to mention. And notwithstanding it, today I think the penetration of LED is probably reasonably small if you look at all of the lighting in the entire world. So in the entire world, 20% of all of the electricity produced is used for lighting. And in the United States, about 26%. So in the US, massive amount, a quarter or so of the electricity is used for lighting. This is only for the countries that have a grid. And we just mentioned that there's a lot of countries that don't have a grid. So these two numbers are massive. And you could look at it in market size, you could look at it in cost of electricity. It doesn't really matter. These numbers are massive, and that's one of the motivation behind this push toward much more efficient lighting.
Well, I have a couple numbers to throw out too. If you look at LEDs today, without considering lighting, there's about $8 billion of spend, which has to do with a lot of the things the gentleman talked about, but it's smartphones and TVs and signage. And if you look at cars, you started to see automotive applications that that's about $8 billion. The illumination is about $1.5 billion, but the key number to think about is that the global spend on illumination, just illumination, it's about $100 billion. That's when you take on incandescents and all these other. Remember, I told you there were 20 billion bulbs shipped last year, right? That's a $100 billion market. So that's why it's really very exciting. But the market is not just lighting, right? There's many different components to it. There's residential, commercial, there's consumer versus businesses. So it's not very easy to segment, right? Because this market is very complex. And that's one of the things that people who invest in this market have to quickly realize. Maurice, do you have a perspective on that, on the different splits and how you think about the market?
Well, I won't have a lot of numbers, but I'll say we break it down into the A19 replacement bulb, number one, right? This is the biggest part of the market, and this is your standard bulb replacements used in your home. Then we go to, in our view, commercial lighting, which would be down lights and troughers, so recessed lights for buildings and commercial applications. And then we would look at street lights and outdoor lighting in general as the next market from our perspective, in lighting, in general lighting from our view.
So it's very complex. So let's go into the LED itself. It seems like there's a number of qualities that are LEDs bringing a number of benefits, and seems like cost, color, pricing are big issues. Let's talk about the trends in there. Vivek, can you tell us about some of the trends in pricing? I know you started a little bit, but today many people can think of that LEDs are expensive. That's when people talk about LEDs, they look around, boy, it's expensive. Where's that going?
I mean, it's going down.
How fast?
It's been going down pretty fast. I mean, if you look at the Lumileds bulb, you know, the bulb that you can see at Home Depot now is about $20, and even 6 months ago was higher, closer to 40.
Yeah, it was 40 years ago, it was 30.
Yeah.
6 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, so, and these guys are making the best bulbs in the world. I mean, in terms of, I mean, there are people who are comparable, but there's no one who's much better. You can also get the cheap Chinese bulbs, which you can also see, you know, on HomeDepot.com or whatever, and those are sub $10. But again, you don't have the quality. Their drivers are a lot cheaper, and they're gonna, you know, fail earlier. So then
Not dimmable also.
they're not dimmable. And you know, if you put if you line, you know, I'm disappointed these are not LED bulbs here, by the way. But if you put those cheap bulbs here, you'll have different colors and coming at different brightness. But it is going down. The question for me also is, you know, what is it going to take for me to buy a bulb at home? I guess we can all answer that in our own way. But you know, $5 to change all your bulbs at home. I think the residential market is going to be tough, but the commercial market definitely, it makes a lot of sense.
And just to add a little bit of flavor to that, I think there's I won't say very, but there are different trends in different segments. So as we look at it, right, we have an internal segmentation of there's professional, outdoor, there's consumer, there's retrofit, there's shops and hospitality and so on. And we do that segmentation primarily because the needs are different, the channel is different, the actual buyers are different. And in most cases, the decision criteria who benefits from actually buying the more energy efficient source is also different. So, you know, it's in a lot of the professional markets, you see much more of an ROI or total cost of ownership approach. So, you know, Walmart is in the process of outfitting. They've got a store in Tennessee that is 100% LED now. They're planning to do that across the board. Their view on it's very different. Anytime a bulb goes out, they have to shut an aisle down. So they actually calculate how many sales am I losing for the 20 minutes. There's a guy with a ladder there who's probably a union person. It takes 1.5 hours to change a light bulb. But, right, but you know, so there's an issue there. They're willing to pay a price. They're willing to pay for quality. We see the same thing in hospitality and shops where you're saying we have customers who will pay quite a bit of premium for color over an angle. They essentially want perfect color over the entire merchandise they're displaying. So the price trends there are different. They're willing to pay for other things besides just lumens. And then you have the other extreme of consumer bulbs where it is literally beyond a point, almost totally about cost, right? And how quickly can you get it down? Because most consumers are unwilling to, there's a sticker shock with the bulb price, and even though the ROI makes sense, they're unwilling to invest the money up front.
So we believe from the market, what we've seen in the market, that inflection point is probably around $12 in the U.S. and equivalent in Europe. And I've heard this from European guys who run the Home Depot, Japan, about the same. So $12 bulb, which implies a $6 BOM cost for a 60-watt A19 replacement, is is that inflection point, or at least a perceived inflection point for the sales of LED lights to take off. And I think we're relatively close to that. Beyond just the Philips, I think we have a reference design that can get to on the $10.50 75 watt or 60 watt bulb using LumaLEDs, and it can be cheaper with a lower quality bulb, a lower quality LED. So I think we're getting close to that inflection point.
What about the quality or some of the other factors beyond just price? What has to happen in those other intangibles to make it acceptable to be in our homes or in our offices?
So, today at least we have a kind of a five-pronged definition of quality of light, and one is around color rendering index in terms of reproduction of actual colors relative to sunlight. There's also about just focus light, right? So I think there isn't a great measure today that's quantified in terms of how much light do you actually get on the area that you're actually trying to focus on. The dimmability is another aspect of it. I think the other thing we often see is just from a purity perspective, there's shades of white, just how well defined or narrow wavelength in terms of light we have. That's less important in residential, but a lot of architectural applications and design, higher end professional markets, there's a lot of focus on those. Lifetime, I think especially for street and outdoor type applications, lifetime is a key consideration. And frankly, even in the consumer markets with things like Energy Star and so on, where there's rebate programs, lifetime and reliability are pretty key. That's something that typically with the, at least today, I think there's only literally 3 or 4 players who can actually deliver that kind of quality at the LED level. And then, of course, the supporting ecosystem has to also deliver.
I think the other point of that is that uniformity is important, right? Because you have to, not many people can do it. So once you get all those 5 criteria down, you have to do that repeatedly and cheaply, and not many people can do that. So I guess if we're talking to people who are interested in making money in the market, that would be one way to, if you can help improve yields and uniformity, because so brightness, color, luminous efficacy or the flux, because if every LED in your bulb is running at the same current, you want the same amount of light coming out, because then it turns out the eye is very sensitive, and lighting becomes a very emotional thing too.
Reproducibility and so on, exactly.
I was going to mention the distribution of light, right? So the ability to deliver the light in a uniform pattern over whatever you're trying to set up. So either in this, so it doesn't look like a series of small spots, or in an A19 replacement bulb where you want the full distribution of light around the circle. These are things that I think matter even to consumer markets, but certainly for design places.
Question I have is, how accurate is when it advertises the hours of light, so the life of the bulb? Is there a standards committee, or is there a requirement how they measure that?
Yes, certainly for Energy Star bulbs there is. I mean, there's reliability, and both the LED manufacturers and the phosphor manufacturers run these things for 2,000, 5,000 hours under stress tests to ensure the lifetime. So I think LEDs will, personally, I believe, will not suffer the CFL issues where we thought they were going to have a lot longer life than they did, and it turned out to be because of these kind of standards. You guys claim that also.
If a bulb advertises 6,000 hours, 98-99% of the bulbs will last that long?
I think if it's a Philips bulb, yes.
So there's no...
Wait, so not just Philips. If it's a quality manufacturer like Philips, the answer is going to be yes. If it's an unbranded manufactured bulb or store brand in Home Depot, I don't know if you'll get
So
that.
there's no FDA.
Not that those are our
There is an
customers.
FDA, but there is I guess there's an Energy Star, there's another for professional applications, there's something called a Design Lights Consortium, there's a standard driven around street lights and so on that all the utilities in the US participate in. There's a European standards body that does similar thing?
You can look up something called LM80.
Yeah.
And you just Google that, that'll tell you all about the
It'll tell you,
testing
yeah.
that has
So
to
there's
happen.
protection in the industry so that if you were to sell a high-quality bulb that lasts longer, you would be accurate in stating how many hours it lasts compared to a less expensive bulb.
I think that the answer is that bulbs pass a certain certification,
Yeah.
and the certification is determined by this thing called LM80, and so it's like UL certification, you know, that kind of stuff. So think of it as that. It's not a guarantee, it's a certification, and it's a process control.
Those are pretty
So,
reliable. Just, you know, for reference, LM80s, what they do is it's an accelerated, higher temperature run through 6,000 hours. So which means when you're seeing something on a shelf that says it's 20,000 hours and test it to that.
But I think we should keep the reliability questions, and we'll just keep going, and we'll have Q&A afterwards, so we'll be able to address these and many other questions. Let's talk about the business of lighting. One of the things that is pretty clear as people start talking about, at least for commercial, is that there's the TCO, right, the total cost of ownership. With LEDs lasting really 50,000 hours, it moves from a CapEx to an OpEx sale. So if you're selling to a building, it's a very different kind of sale. So maybe we should talk about what that means to the business. Alan, can you maybe tell us a little bit about what does it mean for this industry to go from selling a bulb for 60 cents, that's CapEx, to OpEx? What does that mean?
So, I mean, Matt touched on it a little bit. You know, you get to, on a commercial side, you get to have the thinking that says, you know, the return on investment and paying back the bulbs. And so there's a CapEx initially that is an OpEx over time, but most importantly, for industrial application, it's maintenance. Maintenance is a big factor in changing all these light bulbs, closing down, shutting down aisle at a Walmart. It doesn't have as much of an impact on at the consumer level, but certainly for commercial, it's really important.
I was just going to add that for designing new buildings, particularly for making the decision to put in a solid state trough versus fluorescent, and it not only gets into the total cost of ownership, but the quality standards and the light quality that comes out of it, and those things come into a different buying decision. But ultimately, when you're putting in commercial lights into a new building, you analyze all of those things, and you look at the decision the same way.
I think another thing to think about is the total energy life cycle also. I mean, that's in terms of what does it take to, you know, if you want a 50,000 hour bulb, how many incandescent bulbs do you need? How often do you actually turn on? Turns out in residential, you only turn on your bulbs about 2 hours on average versus commercial, so 12, 13 hours a day. So, you know, if you add transportation costs, the cost of the filaments and, you know, glass and whatever, I think the LED also is, and bulbs end up being much cheaper.
I've heard of people start worrying about financing, starting to think about how do I finance, if now I have an asset that's really kind of it's a different kind of APEX versus CapEx versus OpEx, how do I finance that? And that's a very different thinking from just selling a bulb. Any thoughts on that? Anybody seen that in the market?
Yes, there's a lot of activities that are both happening kind of at the institutional capital level as well as at the entrepreneurial level and everywhere in between. It's certainly happening with public buildings and the federal government, and that industry is heavily influenced by entities called ESCOs, or energy service companies. 16 of them have just been labeled, you know, super ESCOs that are now out doing, I think, $32 billion of energy retrofits, not just lighting, but energy broadly, you know, across that public space. I think that this question of you know, transitioning to a total cost of ownership, it's an important component, and it's certainly happening. It's happening in some verticals and in some customer segments more than others. So, you know, I think part of, I imagine, the conversation will continue to come to, the answer will depend really upon who's the customer or who's the channel that you're working with. But I mean, there's some things that are even completely changing that total cost of ownership model. Financing is one of them. There's building code, so you can't even buy a 100-watt light bulb anymore in some countries, and here fairly soon. There's pathways for 75 watts to then go away. So there's a fundamental shift that's happening, and there's probably 10 different macro drivers that are all pushing a pretty large market in one kind of general direction. And it'll be very interesting to see kind of the peaks and valleys that occur kind of in that shift. And certainly that CapEx, OpEx component to it is one. And it's a very interesting conversation. It's one such that, so Enlighted, we just raised the Series B a year and actually 7 months ago, and we have a small team that's dedicated on creating an energy efficiency solution or offering for our customer. And we're not terribly unique like that. I think it's a lever that either can open up the market at best, and at worst it prevents a customer from having another reason to say no. But whether financing can really open up this market on the commercial side is still a question mark, but there's a bunch of entrepreneurs that are starting to look at it.
Alan?
So I think it's a dynamics, just pivoting of what I'm saying, that is a resistance to barrier to entry. I think if you talk to you go to a building manager and say, hey, we want to propose to you retrofitting LEDs, they're going to say, well, first of all, they're too expensive. B, I don't have any capex to do any kind of retrofit. And C, I'm not sure that LED quality is good enough for me to kind of commit to that. Very similar to what happened in solar. So as the technology risk goes away, the quality of the LEDs and the reliability and the quality of the light is becoming much more common. And number two, you have lower cost. Now you can start to see companies financing, say, okay, we're going to make you a proposal, which is, no money down. And that's what solar is booming right now. And I think we're going to see exactly the same with LEDs. No money down. We're going to retrofit, all your building, and it's going to cost X hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you will pay us over time. So you're financing the installation, and that's essentially a result of better technology, lower risk, and higher quality.
One of the things that I think Matt touched on was this issue of channels. One of the things that I was surprised at coming from semiconductor, looking at LEDs, when you think of semiconductor channels, it's very clear, how do you get from point A to point B? But lighting is not very clear. It's a mess, which is an opportunity, but it's also a trap that many of us have fallen into. So maybe our Holy could tell us what the mess looks like and why it is a mess.
So yeah, I'm a semiconductor guy basically, so it was a shock to me when I came in too. But I think you see everything from the GE, Philips, kind of the large players buying everything to mom and pop architecture design houses who probably buy something in the tens or hundreds of units. And I'm not sure that'll actually go away. It's there to stay for good reasons, in the sense that there'll always be a demand for niche markets for lighting is just that broad. I think the challenge for us is just how to serve it, and this is where I think we've carried over we serve each segment slightly differently, right? So there's the direct sales, there's a distribution model from a channel perspective. There's quite a few differences in regions. We see very different behavior in the US versus in China. North America and Europe are fairly similar, but in China we see a lot more, for outdoor at least, there are larger entities you can do business with, but else the rest of it has to be covered by channel. There's some interesting more flow towards online distribution now. It's quite a question of seeding the market and getting people to recognize the value of LEDs and having the technology risk go away. So I think in short, I don't really see, for us at least from a component perspective, as any way of simplifying it that much. It's just learning to live with it and be efficient.
I'd be interested if you see the same thing though, that for retrofit bulbs and probably for troffers and some downlights, it will probably always be a direct sale because it's a very large volume. But I think for some of the mom and pops that you described and some of the design houses, there is the distribution channel that we use, and there's an opportunity to sell the smaller volumes in some of these runs through distribution, which was new for us because of course phosphor products aren't sold that way. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think the other thing we'd likely to see, both with us and probably with other peer companies, is integration across the value chain a little bit. So there's one of the barriers that we recognize today is kind of a lack of standardization in terms of requirements. One way to drive that is to educate the market. The other way to do that is to just grab it and actually start standardizing and moving upwards. I think you see that in the other direction too. We've seen some of our competitors do that. It's partly one of the reasons why Luminaires probably got acquired by Philips when they did do that, was partly to play across the chain. I'm pretty certain over the next 5 to 7 years there'll be a lot more activity in that area.
And I think I'll just to paint some pictures about how absolutely broken and inefficient the channel market can be, or the lighting market can be for different types of applications. So I was in New York last week. I was meeting with somebody who's in essence a lighting contractor doing a tenant improvement in a large commercial building. They had narrowed it down to 2 light fixture manufacturers, and the 2 light fixture manufacturers are owned by the same corporate company. And they'd been in a 1-month bidding war against each other to see who could get to the lowest cost for that specific fixture. And really the only winner in that is, in essence, the sales rep on that one specific account. Because if he or she wins, he's going to get some percentage of that account. It doesn't really matter what the market